No one noticed her when she entered the building that morning, and that was normal, because people like her were meant to be invisible. She wore a faded blue uniform, cheap gloves, her hair tied back tight, her eyes lowered, and every step she took echoed softly on the marble floor as if apologizing for existing. She cleaned offices where powerful men made decisions worth millions, yet her monthly pay barely covered rent and medicine for her mother. She had learned to stay silent, because silence was safer than dignity in that place. They called her only when something was dirty, broken, or unwanted, never by her name, just, "Hey you," or "Cleaner." And that day began like all others, quiet sadness sitting in her chest like a stone, because she had once dreamed of more, but dreams don't survive long when humiliation repeats every day, especially when the man who owned the company enjoyed reminding her where she belonged. He was respected, feared, untouchable, the kind of boss whose laugh could end careers. He mocked weakness, he mocked poverty, and more than once he had made jokes about her in front of others, smiling while people laughed, and she stood there pretending not to hear, pretending it didn't hurt, because she needed the job. And then that morning something went wrong. The elevator stopped between floors, alarms rang softly, panic spread, executives complained, phones came out, but the boss, the powerful man who never feared anything, suddenly went pale. His breath shortened, his leg locked in pain from an old injury no one talked about. Security tried to help but failed. Time passed, meetings were waiting, anger grew, and then someone looked at her, standing there with her mop, and laughed nervously, saying she was strong, saying maybe she could help. And everyone laughed again, because it sounded ridiculous, the cleaning lady carrying the boss, but when the doors finally opened and stairs were the only way, no one else moved, excuses filled the air, suits stepped back, and she stood there, heart racing, hands trembling, knowing she could say no, knowing she should say no. After all the looks, the jokes, the disrespect, yet something quiet rose inside her, not pride, not revenge, just patience, the kind built from years of swallowing pain. She bent down slowly, felt the weight of the moment before the weight of the man, felt eyes burning into her back, and without a word she lifted him, one step at a time, her legs shaking, breath steady, climbing 3 floors while the company watched in stunned silence, her sadness still there, her helplessness still real, but now mixed with something new, a quiet hope she didn't fully understand yet. And as she reached the final step, sweat on her face, hands numb, spine burning, the man on her back finally looked down at her, not as a cleaner, not as a joke, but as a human being, and in that moment something in the room began to shift, though no one knew yet how deeply the balance of power was about to change. The room stayed quiet after she set him down, not the comfortable kind of quiet but the heavy kind that presses on the chest. She stepped back immediately, eyes lowered again, shoulders rounding as if to shrink herself, because she knew her place, or at least she thought she did. Her sadness hadn't disappeared, it was still there, deep and familiar, whispering that nothing ever really changes. People clap for a moment and forget the next, and already she could feel the old fear creeping back, fear that she had overstepped, fear that kindness in a cruel world always comes with a price. The boss straightened his suit slowly, his face unreadable, and everyone waited, assistants, managers, board members, all watching him closely, because his reaction mattered more than her pain ever had. He cleared his throat, tested his leg, winced, then laughed awkwardly, making a joke about how strong she was, and some people laughed too quickly, desperate to stay on his good side, and her heart sank again, because that laugh sounded just like all the others before it, empty, dismissive. She turned to leave, already rehearsing apologies in her mind, already preparing for consequences, but then he stopped her, not loudly, just enough to make the room listen. He asked her name, and the question alone felt strange, almost unreal, because no one ever asked that. Her voice came out small when she answered, and he repeated it slowly, as if tasting it, the way powerful people do when they want to remember something important. Yet she didn't trust it. Hope had betrayed her too many times. Days passed. The story spread through the company, whispered in hallways, exaggerated in lunchrooms. Some praised her strength, others mocked it, calling it a stunt, saying she wanted attention. She kept cleaning, kept her head down, enduring the same looks, the same tone, but something had changed, subtle but real. People watched her differently now, not kinder, just more cautious, and that made her uneasy. She didn't want to be seen. She just wanted peace. One afternoon she was called into a meeting room. Alone, her hands shook as she wiped them on her uniform. The boss was there, seated, leg bandaged, power still wrapped around him like an expensive coat. He spoke calmly, politely even, thanking her again, offering money, a bonus, something to make the moment disappear cleanly. And that offer hurt more than the jokes ever had, because it reduced everything she carried to a transaction. She refused quietly, not boldly, not dramatically, just honestly, saying she did what anyone should do. And for the first time he looked unsettled, not angry, just unsure, as if he had expected gratitude, obedience, something easy, and instead met patience, the kind that doesn't beg or bow. And when she left the room that day, her sadness was still there, her helplessness still real. But deep inside, a small steady hope had taken root, one that told her maybe, just maybe, endurance had not been meaningless after all. The days that followed moved slowly, the way heavy days always do. Nothing dramatic happened at first, no apologies announced, no miracles, just small changes that were easy to miss unless you were used to being ignored. Her schedule shifted, the worst floors disappeared from her list, people stopped snapping their fingers at her, some even said thank you, awkwardly, like they were learning a new language, and she didn't know how to feel about it, because kindness after cruelty can feel like another trap. She stayed patient, stayed quiet, carrying her hope carefully like something fragile. The boss watched her more than she realized. From behind glass walls and half-open doors, he noticed how she worked without cutting corners, how she helped others without being asked, how she listened more than she spoke. And it disturbed him in a way no confrontation ever had, because it reminded him of things he had buried long ago. Nights when he had also been powerless, before money made him loud and untouchable, and then one morning everything shifted, an inspection arrived without warning, auditors, legal teams, outside eyes, the kind that don't care about status or reputation. Panic spread quietly through the upper floors, files went missing, voices lowered, and she saw fear for the first time on faces that once mocked her. She was cleaning a conference room when raised voices spilled into the hall. Accusations, numbers, contracts, mistakes that could not be hidden anymore. She didn't understand the details, but she understood injustice. She had lived inside it for years, and when she was asked what she had seen, what she knew, her hands trembled again, because truth is dangerous when you are small. She could have stayed silent. No one would have blamed her, but patience is not the same as submission, and she spoke carefully, honestly, without anger, without revenge, just facts. Dates, things she had noticed while emptying trash and wiping tables, things no one thought she was smart enough to remember. The room went still, power cracked, not loudly, but enough, and as investigations deepened, the company's image began to crumble. Executives turned on each other, influence failed, connections meant less, and through it all, the boss grew quieter, watching the consequences unfold, realizing too late that strength does not always look like control. And by the time decisions were made behind closed doors, her sadness had softened, her helplessness had loosened its grip, because she could feel it now, justice approaching slowly, not with revenge, but with truth, patient and unavoidable. When the final decision came, it did not arrive with applause or celebration, it came quietly. Like most real justice does, resignations were announced, contracts dissolved, power shifted hands, and the man who once seemed untouchable walked out of his office without the crowd he was used to, his name still respected in public, but forever changed in private, and she watched from a distance, not with triumph, not with bitterness, just with a calm she had never known before, because what mattered was not his fall, but her release. She was called in again days later, this time by new management. People who spoke slower, listened longer. They offered her a different position, training, stability, not as a reward, but as recognition of her integrity. And she hesitated, because years of injustice teach you to doubt good news. Yet she accepted, not for revenge, not for status, but for dignity. The first paycheck felt unreal in her hands, heavier than money should feel. And when she visited her mother that evening, she didn't speak about bosses or buildings or stairs. She just said she was tired, and happy. And for the first time that was true. Weeks later she crossed paths with the former boss one last time in the lobby. He walked slower now, leaned on a cane, power stripped down to something human. He stopped, looked at her, and thanked her. Not for carrying him, but for showing him something he had forgotten. She nodded. Nothing more. Because she no longer needed words. Sadness had passed. Helplessness had faded. Hope had been tested. Patience had held. Injustice had arrived without shouting. And as she walked out into the light, uniform replaced, back straight, steps steady, no one looked through her anymore. Not because she was above them, but because she finally stood where she had always belonged. Seen, respected, and free.